This is not awesome. I know I had a funny joke, too. I had a funny joke. No. Oh, man, you didn't see that. Why? Because it's all an illusion. It's all an illusion, says, Mary Baker Eddy. Weirdo. What is today? Friday? Yeah. Friday, June 3rd. This is your boy, Jeremiah Bannister, the Paleocrat, the one and only, the Grand Poobah over here. PaleocratDiaries every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Unless, of course, we don't make it. It happens from time to time. Man, that was a funny joke, too. I started off the show, and I'm sitting there thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool if I acted like I didn't know I was on the air, and I told my wife, oh, no, I'm not on, it's all an illusion. And then be like, what, she's a heresiarch? What? And then say, yeah, I knew that. And it flopped. It totally flopped, but that's okay. And why is that? Why is it okay? Well, it's okay because today is the day that the Lord has made. And we're going to rejoice, we're going to be glad in it, even when we make mistakes. And in fact, that's kind of a given, isn't it? It's why we make that resolve deep down inside to never give up, to keep on smiling and remember that we too one day shall die. It's totally true. And so we've got to resolve. We got to say, dream bigger thoughts, son. Dream bigger thoughts, sister. Give it everything. Take a knee for Christ the King. Resolve it. Thought, word, deed, all the way to Him. Marching forward in history, marching forward in time. Resolve deep inside that we are children of the King. We got that faith in that light in a dark world. It's really struggling. It's really, really struggling. All the time. Wickedness all around you. Evil all around you. Sickness and disease all around you. All of these things. And yet we have hope. And yet we continue to smile. And we do that because, the Lord. It's totally true. Totally, totally true. Let's see here. I'm going to crank open this window caption. Yeah, people are going to be... It is he. Yeah, this guy gets it. All right, look at this. Oh, so people must have come in a little bit late and not seen the mistake at the beginning. The mistake at the beginning. It didn't happen, guys. It's all an illusion. It is all an illusion. Make sure, like, comment, share, subscribe. You got to do it. You got to do it. We got, you know what? It's one of these things. The empire is expanding. And anyone who is over at the Wolfpack chat over on Telegram, that's basically the HQ, right? That's the HQ for the glad trads. That's the HQ for Catholic presuppositionalism. For that triumphant resolve that we're marching forward, restoring all things to Christ the King, right? That's where it's found. And if you're over there, you are seeing that place is exploding. Totally true. Yeah, it's true. And it's been a bunch of fun, but it's getting kind of wild. And we've heard the outcry. People are like, look, we love the debate. We like the rough and tumble of the whole thing. That's part of the octagon, right? It's part of the octagon. However, there's a lot of Johnny Q's and Sally Sue's that don't feel necessarily that they would be able to participate. Or that they're like, whoa, this is intense, right? There's a lot of debate happening here. And look, it's true. There are Catholic people who say the darndest things. They do. They watch the show. They're like, oh, man, this guy's mega dope. And then they come in and they're like finding any possible reason to oppose the magisterium. Any possible reason for disobedience. It's really what they want. It's really deep down inside, it's what they want. And they're not really listening, I don't think. I've never heard a good argument back thus far. I'm interested. I'm interested to hear, okay? In fact, well, there is someone who happens to disagree with some things, and we're going to have a conversation. We're going to have a conversation about it because it's gotten big, and that happens to be your boy, Tim Flanders. And so we're setting up a time where we would be able to talk this sort of thing out, maybe in a live chat with the Guild family stream, a private Guild family stream. But I want something to be public, too. I want it to be something, because I think this is a big issue. The idea of obedience, as we understand it on this program, and as we advance it on this program, rooted in the sources and authorities that we are, in those who would happen to disagree, okay? Like, for example, Dr. Peter K. That cat. Come on now. Magisterium-itis. You got to do better than that. Martin Lutheritis won. You made that up. You made that word up a couple days ago. It's a cheap knockoff. But it shows maybe someone took something a little personally. I don't know. I think he's probably a really nice guy. But we definitely disagree, right? We definitely disagree over over the issue of disobedience. When, where, to what degree, how do we resolve it and crank it back to life once we think it's been resolved, etc. Those kind of debates, man, it causes all sorts of chaos over on the Wolfpack. So we have heard your cry, and today we will be launching a chat by invite only. Okay, so if you're somebody that's like, look, I like that, but I don't know all the theology and philosophy, the isms and Asians and all that stuff, and I'm sick and tired of seeing, frogs or whatever all over the place. If that's you, it's okay, because this is for the Johnny Q and the Sally Sue and the Catholic Pew. So we have created Paleocrats, Johnny Q, and Sally Sue chat, and that is going to be available. There's not going to be any kind of crazy, huge, hardcore debates. It is going to be a place for the average person, right, to learn the faith, to better understand what they believe. It's going to be basically like a group we're going to be helping in the process of catechesis, saying, look, this is what this is going to be, prayer, fun. So not just going to be about that. It's going to be fun. And, of course, also, last reminder, we also, of course, have the Fat Shame to Fitness program going on. That is for the fatties in the world who are sick and tired of being fat slobs. Are you sick and tired of being a fat slob? Are you sick and tired of sitting in front of the TV all day long, putting your hand in a bag of Doritos while on your other hand eating a bunch of ice cream, right? And in between those, you're reaching over for the chicken nuggies. Is that you? Are you sick and tired of finding yourself gravitating to the fridge and you're eyeballing stuff and you can't say no? You can't say no to what's on the plate because you were taught this weird logic that you need to clean it or you're disrespectful to like people in Africa or something. Like if you don't eat all of that hamburger, there's somebody in Africa who's really mad at you. And I'm like, they're probably mad that you're just like grotesquely fat. They're like, look, can't you just share a little bit? I mean, come on, you're literally hogging it all. So if you're somebody in that position and you want to be around other people who are learning to only eat when they're hungry, only eat until they're full, and to know the difference between being hungry in the belly, in the tum-tums, and being hungry in the heart and the soul, being hungry in the mind, and saying, just because I'm hungry in my heart and I'm hungry in my soul for the Lord, I'm hungry in my mind, it does not mean, right? Sometimes it's misdirected. Or sometimes you're bored, or sometimes you need comfort, or whatever it is. All of those other signals that cause us to kind of veer off in a weird direction toward, the fridge. If you're one of those people that would rather figure this out, and whenever you have those cues and those triggers in your head that have traditionally, right, historically led you to a place where you get to the point where you're hearing yourself get fatter in real time, then make sure to go over and ask for the link. You can find that. You can either email me, of course, information in the description below, or you can go on Telegram, which you should be anyway. Come on now. It's over. Just do it. Just do it. You are missing out if you're not doing that. All right, but send me a DM. You'll get the link. We do live streams there, but it's all private, okay? We're doing live streams. We talk about different techniques people can do, questions people have, like what do I do if I'm with family? Can I still eat with my family? If I'm only eating when I'm hungry, what if dinner time comes and I'm not hungry? Like questions like that. We talk about it, and we support each other with prayer. Let's see here. Let's see. Checking in from North Carolina. Going to the ball game today. Dude, I miss it. I miss it, man. I used to go to ball games all the time. I used to love going to regular, like going to the softball games, hardball stuff. Fast pitch, even watching chicks play softball and stuff, man. It's always fun watching the way they pitch and everything, man. People can make fun all they want, dude. You try hitting that. You try hitting it. Right? I have some respect for that. Not so much for the WNBA, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. All right, let's see. More isms and frogs. Yeah, LOL. Yeah, glad to see all of you. Again, make sure, like, comment, share, subscribe. And of course, make sure to go and check out the SAINTMAKER. You've got to do it. I normally have it. Let me see. Is it in my bag? My mega dope bag? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You got to get this, okay? You got to get it. I won't say much. I'll allow me to say much more in just a second. But I will say, if you're somebody you want to be a mover and shaker, right? You're sick and tired of not just being a fat slob, but your life is all gross, right? Your life is not well structured. Your life is not well organized. Your time, I get it. I get it. Believe me. Ask my wife. She'll tell you. She'll be like, oh, yeah, him? Yeah, he's all over the map. You know, it's what happens. And people need to figure out ways to get their lives under control. But it has to start with God. That's why we're doing in the fat camp that we're focusing on prayer. That anytime you're hungry, but you're not really hungry in the Tums, you end up praying. In this way, this is like part of that megazord that we're making here, right? Is that you can sit here and say, okay, how do I structure my time? How do I structure my week? How do I remember my events and stuff? You're not going to be perfect with it, right? You're not going to be perfect with it, but it's going to help. It's going to help, and it helps in so many ways. And to learn more about all of those different ways that the SAINTMAKER can help you, listen to this guy. He's pretty smart. Can a personal planner really make you a saint? Not by itself. But in our day and age of addictive apps and glowing screens, we're bombarded by constant distractions, and our quest for sainthood often takes a backseat. The SAINTMAKER is the first high-performance planner for the spiritual life, made by faithful Catholics for faithful Catholics. It's a work of genius, really, fusing the wisdom of the saints with the science of personal productivity. It's rigorous, but sainthood is tough, and most of us need help organizing our time, our work, our leisure, and our devotion, because that can help you become a saint. The SAINTMAKER is elegant, fits in your purse or briefcase, and is a perfect companion for your missal, Bible, or rosary. Published 4 times per year, each season includes daily planning pages, feast days, and devotions for both forms of the liturgical calendar, goal-setting pages, confession journals, and more. It's why the SAINTMAKER is used by hardworking Catholics like CEO of Sock Religious Scott Williams, best-selling author Sam Guzman, YouTubers like Amber Schneider, a Catholic wife Dina Barca and Brian Holdsworth, and priests like Father Corey Stitcha. Try the SAINTMAKER out, and if you decide that it's not for you, you can send it back for a full refund within 90 days. So go right now. Find your life planner at thesaintmaker.com. Quantities are limited though, so head on over to thesaintmaker.com to order yours and to start your SAINTMAKER journey today. I told you that guy was good. You got to check it out, saintmaker.com/PaleocratDiaries. Information in description below, including a 10% discount if you use your boy's promo code. So you got to do it. Oh, you've got to do it. Speaking of got to do it, you got to break out that magical conch. You got to break out the shofar. You got to break out the didgeridoo. You got to break out that mega dope horn that those guys from the Ricola commercials on the top of the mountains over in Europe, right? Over in Europe, that they break out. You got to break it out, right? Jedediah's down. He's sitting there. He's lighting up his Marlboro right now. He's puffing as fast as he can. All of his coworkers are like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, PaleocratDiaries is on. He's doing that. I don't know why. I don't know why you're doing that, bro. Get out that xylophone. Get out whatever it is. Strum that guitar. Pound on that drum and let the world know that your boy is on the air. And we're going to enter the octagon of history. And what are we going to do? We're talking about some cults. We're talking about the mother lode, the mothership, the matriarch, the mother church of mind science. Woo! We're talking that chick, Mary Baker Eddy. It's probably the worst written chapter in the book. I have a feeling it was Ravi Zacharias. I do. I'm like, well, who wrote this? You know, but the content's good. And the content, of course, on the show is mega dope. So you gotta release those carrier pigeons right now to the north, to the south, to the east and the west, letting everybody know that we are not only entering that octagon, but we're doing so having taken a knee for Christ the King, choosing that ancient path. That's what paleocrat means. It's the ancient law. It's the old order of things from that place in Jeremiah that we see that crossroad. And we say, I can either go in that road of the new age, of the mind science, of all of the cults and innovations, the fakery and phony nonsense from Quackadoodle University. We can do that, or we can stay on that tried and true path. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean it's easy, but it's all the more reason to take up your cross, to take that knee, and to resolve deep inside, never give up. keep on smiling. And remember, you're going to die. And it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there, because we one day will be with the Lord and our loved ones if we press through, if we don't fall for the fakery and the big money hustlers in the kingdom of the cults and raging heresy, blasphemy and all that. And that's what the show is about, is helping you stay true. All right. Very, very, very good. Very grateful for all of you again. Super pumped up. Glad that you are here. Oh, man. Oh, man. Okay, Kingdom of the Cults. Now, look, people, it was part of me was thinking, how about we just skip over this particular part? I mean, it's one of those things where, you might be familiar with one of their reading rooms, in your town, and you're like, I really don't know what that is. It says Christian Science on it. Right? And I don't really know. I have no friends that go there. and you might think it's not really relevant. You might think, look at the numbers. The numbers have gone down dramatically. All sorts of weird scandals, of course. Cults are just riddled with it. I mean, there's always going to be scandals, stuff like that, right? It's going to happen. But cults are particularly prone to this. That's what happens. And so the thing is, though, is that some of these cults are important, not just because of who they were and what they said, but how it affected the world in ways that we may not really see so readily. We talked about that in the original Enthusiasm series, which can be a link down below for the full catalog. So you can see the entire catalog of what we do, all the different episodes, including apologetics and all that stuff, Lassance, secular age and all that. But back to the beginning, back to the nature and philosophy of enthusiasm. The nature of this thing, once it's kind of made its way into the system and it's spread around, enough of these little fragments, right, shoot off, because it constant explosion, creative destruction, draws in, explodes out, draws in, explodes out, and little bits and pieces end up getting stuck within institutions, ideas, the way that they develop in time, general social imaginaries, right? The way that we perceive the world, those things we take for granted sometimes in our lives. And maybe not as an entire broad picture, but a picture for ourselves and maybe our upbringing and our family and different institutions we're part of. A good example of this is, and particularly with this, would be the influence that her ideas, Quimby's ideas, and others who followed in her footsteps, the mind sciences, with the movement known as Word of Faith, right? The name it, claim it, tag it, bag it, flab it, grab it, right? That crowd. All right, that crowd, they have a tremendous influence from people like, for example, Mary Baker Eddy, even if they don't recognize it, even if they would like to disavow it and say, no, she was part of this group. It's irrelevant. We're talking about how ideas affect other people. And sometimes, we may not realize it. We may not realize it. So while the institution itself may go down, kind of like the Moravians, right? The Moravians, how many people know of those people, right? Hardly anybody, probably. And yet the kind of language and ideas and expectations surrounding conversion experiences is something that had a dramatic impact across the board. And so much of conversation, have you had a salvation experience? Have you had a conversion experience where it's a hard line of difference between the person you were before and the person you are now, other than just your external actions, right? That now you're living differently. There's something deeper, something more. If you haven't felt that, if you can't know that deep down in the feels, right? Then something's off with you. And this idea took off like wildfire. It ended up getting tethered with John Wesley and his whole, Methodist, the heyday of Methodism, right? It did. And so you end up going around, you have all these crazy revivals going on. You have all these crazy revivals, all of these enthusiasms fleshing themselves out. All the while, John Wesley is worried that he himself has not, in fact, had that experience himself. And yet it's at the core of his system. It's at the core of his beliefs. So even that, even in a way, think about that, even in a way that the founder of a system who believed in that idea did not himself have that experience, and yet that the experiences of other people tethered with his idea, tethered with the idea of an experience he never had, fleshed itself out all over the place and has had dramatic, lasting impact on groups all across the world, all in different kinds of different shades on the spectrum of the various kinds of faith, right, that believe in Christ or that believe in the Bible, that fleshes itself out in time. Okay? Same thing with Christian Science. So, all right. For decades, Christian Science was the matriarch of the mind science family. With a large and growing membership, secular and religious respect, and great wealth, the Mother Church dominated the mind science movement. More important in almost all respects than Unity School of Christianity, mind science, religious science, divine science, and their other siblings. By the way, is that a little bit of a weird debate? Like, they're like, oh, you're mind science, I'm divine science. So, like, you're divine science, I'm religious science. Oh, you're religious science, I'm the Unity School of Christianity science. And they're all just upping each other. Yeah, no, you're Christian Science? Yeah, I'm divine science. Okay. You think you're better than me? You want to fight about it? Yeah. The next couple of decades will tell whether Christian Science will be able to survive. Yet even now, the Christian Science called is a powerful force with which Christians everywhere must deal. We shall examine its roots, founder, growth, and controversies, and contrast its teaching with Scripture as well as with tradition. So, right away, right? And sometimes people say, why are you emphasizing so much the founders and everything? Because that plays a big role. We do too. We talk about the saints. We talk about the church fathers. We talk about the apostles. We talk about the Lord, right? We see that as part of a unit, and we think that it's important. It's not an accident. It's not like, oh, well, I guess it just could have been anybody. But it wasn't, right? It wasn't. And we ought to give these heresiarchs their due. Keep their names loud, real big in big, scary letters. That way people go, oh, this person? Oh, I know about that person. No thanks. No thanks. Yeah, they called her mother, right? Mary Baker Eddy, mother and leader. Quote, discoverer and founder of Christian Science. She was born in Bow, New Hampshire in 1821, reared in a strict Congregationalist home. Now, that's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? It's like you see this a lot, actually, man. It seems like there's a whole bunch of weirdness that is emanating from the Congregationalist church. And at this point, you're still seeing it. You're still seeing it with the controversies that go on now with, the lesbian, the Esbian. Yeah, all the Esbians over there. Yeah, the Eskimo. That's what it is. It's an Eskimo lesbian. Yeah, and, the Eskimo lesbian, gender fluid, red-haired, freckled kid in a wheelchair that's now the priest kind of thing. Yeah. The diversophilia that's all over the place over there. The kind of nonsense that they're into the God is still speaking thing. And it's kind of like, it's new stuff is constantly coming out, man. I'm connected to the conduit. I'm connected to the fountainhead, and I'm just constant revelations. Constant. The life of young Mary Baker, until her 22nd year, was marked with frequent illnesses, both emotional and physical in nature, and the then infant science of mesmerism was often applied to her case with, some success. She was married a couple times, in fact, 3. The third and last marriage was one to Asa Eddy, when Mrs. Eddy was 56 years of age. Asa, his death of a coronary thrombosis prompted Mrs. Eddy to commit a nearly fatal mistake where Christian Science was concerned. She contested the autopsy report. That sounds like, it's okay. She's like, oh, he died of so her husband, she's into this mind science guru nonsense, and her husband ends up dying, right, of coronary thrombosis. And she's like, no, that's not right. So what does she do? And by the way, you're going to learn later why even that's absurd for her to do. Matter's illusory. Matter is illusory. It's not real, guys. What are you contesting then, weirdo? It's one of those things, right? Worldviews matter, but no matter what somebody espouses, there are certain things they just can't get around. It's almost as if there's a interconceptual framework at play that they can't entirely get rid of, but they work really hard to suppress. The physician she chose confirmed her conviction. And what was that? That her husband died of, quote, arsenic poisoning. Oh, okay. That sounds like, oh, wait, hold on. Mentally administered. Mentally administered, guys. Mentally administered. Yeah. Well, what would you do if you're sitting there And you're like, okay, well, yeah, I think the husband died. It was coronary thrombosis. And they're like, no, it was arsenic poisoning. You're like, holy cow. Who did that? Did Mary do that? And they're like, no, mentally administered. What? What are you talking about? That's what that is. Mentally administered. Some dude over in the corner looking at you with the shakes, right? He's looking at you over in the corner, and you're like, oh no, what's he trying to do? And he's like, I'm poisoning you. What? Arsenic poisoning. What? I'm glad you don't have arsenic mentally administered. I'd be like, bro, can we scooch over a couple seats? This dude's rabid. Apparently, there were other doctors that thought that was a rabid report. It prompted an inquiry into the credentials of Mrs. Eddy's physician, Dr. C.J. Eastman. He is the dean of the Bellevue Medical College outside of Boston. Apparently, they found that Dr. Eastman was running a virtual abortion mill. Wow. Yeah, so he's obviously he's a demoniac right away. He had no medical credentials whatever to justify his title. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison upon his conviction, and the Bellevue Medical College closed. Mrs. Eddy had contradicted her own advice concerning autopsies, and she would have been far better off to have practiced, in this instance, what she preached, and to have abandoned her husband's remains to the scrap heap of mental malpractice. She could have just said, look, my husband, if he just would have practiced this thing right, he would have done better. It obviously says more about him than about me. And I really miss him. I wish he would have tried harder. She could have done it, but instead kind of shot herself in the foot. Because she picked that dude. Hold on. I don't know why it does that. Sometimes it's all sorts of hot. Yeah. Mrs. Eddy's letter to the Boston Post dated June 5th, 1882. In which she accused some of her former students of mentally poisoning Asa Eddy with malicious mesmerism in the form of arsenic, mentally administered, is one of the most pathetic examples of Mrs. Eddy's mental state ever recorded, and one which the Christian Science Church would like to forget that she ever wrote. I gotta read this thing. Why didn't I read that? Why didn't I read that? We gotta share that somehow. I don't know if people are able to, let me see if I'm able to do this. Give me 1 second. We're going to try this. Yeah. I got to read this. If you're able to post that in the chat, that would be excellent. Or send it to me in a DM. I'd love to read that. Ugh. The real history of Christian Science, however, cannot be told unless one P.P. Quimby of Portland, Maine, is considered. For history tells us that Miss Eddy was the mother of Christian Science, so Phineas Parkhurst Quimby was undoubtedly its father. Here's the thing. We talked about Quimby, didn't we? We talked about Quimby, and where did we talk about him? Do you remember? I'll give you like 2 seconds. Word of Faith. The Word of Faith movement. We talked about that and the credit that even they give on some things to Quimby. In the late 1850s, entitled A System of Mental Healing, The Science of Man, and used the terms the science of Christ and Christian Science. And that was for some time before Miss Eddy gratuitously appropriated the terminology as her own, something she dared not do while the old gentleman was alive. So, so she didn't appropriate it before, right? She's like, yeah, I totally respect this guy. And then the moment he dies, she's like, stealing it. Hold my beer. We're in the clear, folks. We are in the clear. I'm clear, Rick. Miss Eddy's relationship to Dr. Quimby began when she arrived in Portland, in Maine, in 1862 and committed herself to his care for treatment of spinal inflammation. It's one of those things, ain't it? Right? Where a lot of these word faithy people, man, they're always talking about things, almost always, right? Talking about stuff like, I had some arthritis in my knees, something, right? My knuckles were not like, they weren't like bulbous or anything yet, or real knuckly and such, but it was really painful. The kind you would typically take an Advil for, but regularly. It is a nuisance always. And the Lord healed me of that. You're like, how would I know this? Trust me, I would never lie. Yeah, because, look, they didn't need to learn the lesson. They didn't need to learn the lesson that old L. Ron Hubbard, right? That L. Ron Hubbard would one day give the world of saying a whole bunch of stuff about himself, about what he was healed from, that's very easily debunked. Very easily debunked, man. Let's see. In later years, her recollection, because apparently his system was able to heal that, right? So his system was good. She was like, oh man, it completely healed me. It was mega dope. But later, she had a different kind of stance on this dude. She did not hesitate to describe him as a very unlearned man. Yes, he was very unlearned. Oh, he was. Well, yeah, when you believe you become a master, in the spiritual sense, you're listed amongst the gurus of space and time. Yeah, at that point, you might think that, your sensei is nothing compared to the grasshopper. It happens all the time. Let's see here. Yeah, so Dr. Quimby termed his idea the science of health. Miss Eddy entitled her book Science and Health with Keys to the Scripture and published it in 1875. Numerous plagiarisms, right, from the manuscripts of P.P. Quimby and by the writings of Francis Lieber, a German-American publisher and author on the philosophy of Hegel. Yeah, but they did disagree, however. So it's not as if it's like a complete ripoff, okay? It's not a complete ripoff because they disagreed on matters of matter, for example, the role of religion, and their perception of God. Yeah, the basic distinction, the idealism of Eddy, differs substantially with the mind-material dualism of Quimby. And here's the thing. People are like, why are you going after, all the plagiarism and stuff? Well, because it's one of these things, right? Sometimes the heresy arcs bite off more than they can chew. Because they want to sound good to the people who are easily duped. They want to sound good to that. And they sound good by a crazy kind of virtue. Well, a regular expectation of virtue, I guess. Of upstanding citizenship and basic humanity. Our authority for exposing this plagiarism on the part of Mother Eddy is none other than Mrs. Eddy herself, who wrote, quote, "We need tell the truth concerning a lie. The evasion of truth cripples integrity and casts 3 down from the pinnacle." Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, sounds good. So we're going to totally expose you. We're going to do what you're talking about. Oh, she goes further. There is no warrant in common law and no permission in the gospel for plagiarizing an author's ideas and their words. Well, yeah, okay. So there's like a whole bunch. In this book, you can go through line after line after line after line after line from all different books. Holy cow. It's paralleled, one next to the other, right? And I'm not going to go through all of them. I want to stick with her basic ideas, right? But you can see that you say, look, you judge for yourself, okay? Line, column by column, column by column, column by column. There you go. Boom, 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 boom. And each one of these paragraphs is another part that's just straight up plagiarized. Just straight out. But I'm more interested in the basic worldview rather than simply showing the pitfalls of an individual, right? Because look, there are people, and it's one of the questions he asks in here in the book. Why would various institutions, even Congress, why would they give her any kind of awards? Because they still honor her and her legacy and everything else when they know that she's a plagiarizer. I mean, we know the same thing technically about Martin Luther King Jr. All right, it's true, totally true. The figment of divine authorship. According to an authorized statement published by the Christian Science Publishing Society, maybe you actually heard of this. Have you ever heard of like the Christian Science Monitor? Have you ever read it? I think Pat Buchanan's one of the people that they publish. At least he has been. Was pronounced incurable. So according to them, they say that she had this fall, right? And that she had this fall on February 1st, 1866. And that she was pronounced incurable. She was given 3 days to live by the attending physician, Dr. Alvin M. Cushing. The third day, allegedly her last day on earth, Eddy, the statement makes out, cried for a Bible, read Matthew 9, verse 2, and rose completely healed. What is Matthew 9, 2? Let's see. Saint Matthew 9, 2. I'll put it in the dewey. All right, let's do that. Let's do it. Chapter 9. And behold, they brought to him one sick of the palsy lying in a bed. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said to the man sick of the palsy, Be of good heart, son. Thy sins are forgiven. Okay. Now, this is a weird verse for her to actually use, because later, even sin is illusory. Even sin. And so you go, okay, that's kind of weird. But that's what she read. And she said from that incurable place, she read that verse, and she stood up. And she's like, just walking out mega dope, feeling great. But she wanted to figure out what was behind that, right? It's a miracle, but was there some kind of magic trick? Was there some kind of formula that she could use to figure it out? Some incantation that if you just figured out this blueprint of healing, right, that you would be able to apply that across the board. What was it? What impact did it have on the world? The only problem is a doctor, right? What's the dude's name? What's the dude's name? Yeah. Apparently, she was never in danger of losing her life in the manner described. And, quote, never rose the third day healed and free, as she maintained. Two incontrovertible facts establish these truths beyond doubt. Okay, you can't even doubt this. They are as follows. Number one, Dr. Alvin M. Cushing, the attending physician at this illness of Mrs. Eddy's, denied under oath in a 1,000-word statement that he never, ever believed that she, never said or believed that she was in a precarious physical condition. So he's like, look, I never said that. She fell on the sidewalk. She's a drama queen. He could have just lumped it up like that. Everybody be like, oh, yeah, I get it. We know the types. The people that like, they end up, your kids, right? Your kids, they get a boo-boo and they're like, they're screaming, and they come, mama, papa, and they come up and they're holding it, shaking like this. And you look, and what is it? A splinter. The tiniest, easiest splinter your eyes have ever beheld. And you're like, ugh. Give me the tweezers. I think it's incurable. Give me the Bible stat. I'm like, get him the Bible for a different reason. There's a lot in there to help you on this score. Be brave. Do not be a wuss. So she was a wuss. She was a wussy drama queen, apparently. Over-exaggerating drama queen. Shoving words into doctors' mouths. She's like, oh, he said I was going to die. He said I was on my last legs. I'm not only not going to live anymore, I might not even walk. And you're like, what? It's incurable. It's done. I'm over. It was all over. No, it wasn't. Says who? Your doctor. Wow. Oh, yeah? Where did he say that? A 1,000-word statement to the court. Oh. Moreover, Dr. Cushing stated, contrary to the claims of Christian scientists, that Eddy always enjoyed robust health. Yeah. And that he further attended her in August of the same year 4 separate times and administered medicine to her body for bodily ailments. So this is where they could hurl back and go, well, wait a second. Did you just write that sentence? On the one hand, she's in robust health. On the other hand, you had to go 4 times. Well, maybe it was toward the end of her life, right? That he went 4 times to the end of her life. He was actually giving her some morphine, I think. Well, another one of those things that you end up getting in trouble for. The other point, though, is Julius Dresser, pupil of the late Dr. Quimby, received a letter from Eddy dated February 15th, 1866, 2 weeks after she allegedly recovered. Right? It was an icy sidewalk. It was like a Dr. Atkins story. It was like Dr. Atkins. Homeboy died from that. Right? So maybe that's what she thought. Maybe she foresaw. She's like, I don't want to be Dr. Atkins. They're gonna blame the diet. They're gonna blame the diet of worms in my brain, the enthusiasm in my veins. By the way, I mentioned that to Milo. Yes, I was in Spexo's chat. By the way, if you haven't seen my interview on Spexo, it might be the most based video on politics and other things. We're talking about culture and all these other issues. I didn't even know it was being recorded. Yeah, Spexo and Pine Sap. I was on that show. I was just in a live chat. But I mentioned it to Milo yesterday. He was watching a video. My father Hess, Gregory Hess. I was talking about, that he might have died of diabetes, but he was on a diet for a very long time, the diet of worms in the brain. Enthusiasm in his veins. And I don't know if did I ever hear back from Milo? Did he reply to me? You better reply, dude. You better reply. Why wouldn't you? Actually, I think you'd like the show, weirdo. Watch my show, Milo. I think you'd like it, for real. I'm not joking. Yeah, so here's the thing, though. So she was, a fall. In this letter, Eddy alluded to the fall and claims Dr. Cushing resigned her to the life of a crip. Right? Yeah. So she alludes to it. Barring the obvious medical error within what she alluded to, right, of a doctor administering chloroform and ether to an unconscious person, because she said she woke up to the smells. Oh, man, there, chloroform and ether. And it's like, at that time, Eddy's account once again demonstrates her ability to think in paradoxes and contradict all reason and logical expression. Yeah. The whole thing. It's ridiculous. After leaving Lynn, where she lived, largely because of the revolt of most of her students, Eddy came to Boston and opened what later became the Massachusetts Metaphysical College. I have to say this because my boy lives in Massachusetts. His name is Phil. He might actually be in the comments. Let me see real quick. Are you in the comments, Phil? Are you in there? You almost got me in trouble, homie. You almost got me in trouble. Yeah. And the thing is, the reason you almost got me in trouble is because every time I think of Mary Baker Eddy in Massachusetts, I always think that there's some telephone that they've set up to have it ring when, to let her know or whatever, to let them know everything's cool. A telephone. Bro, that's a rumor. It's fake. It's not real, dude. And if it's real, you better take a picture, man. You better take a picture and show me. I think you've been duped, man, by a local urban legend. I think you've been duped, homie. I ain't going down with you on that. I think it's the long con. He's been saying that for a long time. And he's from there. He's like, oh, yeah, man, they got a telephone. And I'm like, oh, dude, he would know. So I was about to say it. Phil, what are you doing to me, man? What are you doing, bud? But she had a whole bunch of defectors, man. Her toadies, right? Her toadies were all like, we're done with this. Something's whack. We're out of here. Your teachings are real messed up, lady. Right? So she ended up leaving, right? After the revolt of her students. But then she went to Boston. And she started this college where she allegedly taught some 4,000 students at $300 per student over a period of 8 years. Now, this is one of the arguments in this book that I'm like, some of this stuff is just cheap. One cannot help but wonder, what would induce a reasonably intelligent person to spend that amount of money for a course that never lasted the length of a college half semester, and which was taught by a staff hardly qualified intellectually to instruct the 9th grade? Eddy herself knew comparatively nothing of biblical history, theology, philosophy, or of ancient languages. Yeah, but dude, there's a lot of people in it. For one, it has this idea about people that, I want to just get this out of the way, man. This is kind of a garbage assumption about people in general, okay? There's a lot of individuals who fall prey to cults and to wicked bad heresies that are totally absurd and easily debunked, that are otherwise knowledgeable. They have a great deal, their intellect, right? You may have somebody, in fact, we see this a lot with people with enormous IQs. They have some of the most eclectic, weird, bizarre, strange, and false ideas, demonstrably false ideas about the world. But yet they can have an enormous wealth of knowledge. Individual things, it's the way that they assemble them. Messes them up. Their willingness to kind of go outside the lines, to get involved in alchemy and things like that, hermeticism, all this stuff, right? Eclecticism. It's a big problem. But people in cults, they're not in cults just because they're, dumb. Now they're foolish. They're foolish. That's an ethical thing, right? And we're going to see this with the Father Yod cult, right? The Father Yod cult, that's a great example of it. Because in his system, you had a lot of people who later on become, computer engineers, work for major companies. Most of these kids were Berkeley students. And people can say, well, that's Berkeley. Yeah, but we're talking the level of scholarship. There's no question that Berkeley is preaching a bunch of poo-poo nonsense. There's no doubt about it. However, I would challenge a lot of people. Get into a discussion with them. It's going to be tougher than you think. You're going to need to have studied and to understand, how do I approach someone like that? There's a lot of really otherwise intelligent people with really bad ideas. Ideas that we try to teach you here how to spot and how to undermine, to pull that rug out from beneath them, to show that even the wisdom of the world is foolish. That God's made foolish that wisdom of the world. Sounds bright. Sounds bright. So you have that all the time. Scientology, you're paying out the nose hole for that. Paying out the nose hole for that. For holding on to some stupid cans, watching a guy read a little dial talking about you releasing engrams and such. Asking if you pooped your pants yet. And if you don't know what that's about, you got to watch the last episode. I'll make a clip out of that because it was too good. That was good. And plus, the last thing about it is that what appeals to a lot of these people is not necessarily that they have a ton of information or that they have a really big education. It's what kind of spiritual insights do they have? And we have a lot of background in Christianity. We have a whole bunch of where everyday folks ended up, having a role to play within salvation history, even within the stories of Revelation, even within prophecies and stuff like that. It wasn't just because you were super smart and had a degree. That's kind of a weird assumption here of this book, I think. Reverend J.H. Wiggins, her literary advisor for some years and himself an excellent scholar, has gone on record saying that she was grossly ignorant of the subjects in question. When Eddy left the thankless community in Lynn, Massachusetts, she was then 61 years old, and she possessed less than 50 persons that she could call followers. It's one of these things where you say, how... And so if she ends up leaving and she's got 50 people, how do you survive that? What do you do? Well, right, she had an indomitable will and perseverance. She began to pay sizable dividends, or her perseverance and her will began to pay off. Her churches and societies numbered well over 400, and the membership in them eventually increased from 800 to 900%. Considering what she had to work with, Eddy accomplished a financial miracle and a propaganda goal unrivaled for its efficiency and ruthlessness. And we say ruthless, right? We say ruthless because she would tell people what they're to read for the next year, for example. And so you have situations like this. Christian Scientists in the United States and Canada are hereby enjoined not to teach a student of Christian Science for 1 year, commencing on March 14th, 1897. And you're like, okay, so you don't want us teaching the others in the group. What do we do then? How are they going to learn? Oh, I've got it covered. Miscellaneous writings is calculated to prepare the minds of all true thinkers to understand the Christian Science textbook more correctly than a student can. So there's that. She's basically making the idea that she doesn't need any mediation. You just got the direct zoink zoinks, right? You got the zoink zoinks. Sitting there, opening the book, eyes opened up like Clockwork Orange. I see it. Yeah, I caught the vision. I had a good trip. You don't need anybody else. It's direct. The Bible, Science and Health with Key to the Scripture, and my other published works are the only proper instructors for this hour. It shall be the duty of all Christian scientists to circulate and to sell as many of these books as they can. And she's like, look, my work that I did is more than sufficient. It's really important. It's the way that you would know the truth, the way that you would see that evil, sin, sickness, matter, all of these things, death is illusory. Oh, that's fantastic. Are you giving these out for free? Oh, no. Oh, no. Instead, no. I want all the students of Christian Science to circulate and to sell as many of these books as they can. Wow! Circulate and sell. Pass around. Circulate and sell. That's what it is. Yeah. That's a plan right out of hell. For real. Saying like, okay, so what do we do? Oh, we got to sell as many as we can. Okay, guys, have you been selling them? Are you doing your job? If a member of the First Church of Christ Scientist shall fail to obey my injunction, it will render him liable to lose his membership in this church. Signed, sincerely, tons of love. Wink, wink, nod, nod, butterfly kisses. Mary Baker Eddy. Mary Baker Eddy. So, if you don't do what she's saying and sell the books, you're going to lose your membership, man. That's bad. That's bad. That's almost as bad as Oral Roberts saying, if my supporters don't give me a whole bunch of millions of dollars and to make a hospital, God said he's going to kill me. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And he's like, oh, even worse, he just told me an extra thing as a PS at the end of it. And like, what's that? And he's like, oh, you're all going to die of diseases too. What? What are you talking about? Holy cow. Now, she requested the Christian Scientists universally read the paragraph beginning at line 30, right, of Science and Health. Oh, it's a new one. Oh, February 1908. She requested that they do. Right, at line 30 on page 442 in the edition of Science and Health, which will be issued, of course, on February 20, well, not of course, but February 29. I consider the information there given to be of great importance, especially at this state of the working of animal magnetism, and it will greatly aid the students in their individual experiences. Love, Mary Baker G. Eddy. Yeah, here's the problem. Here's the problem. You know what that was? So you had to go and you had to buy it. You had to go and be like, there's a new edition of the book coming out with a special thing in there. You've got to read this. It is, oh my gosh. She goes down and tells you where to find it, what paragraph, what page. And all these people are like, dang, son, this is a special revelation, a new secret Easter egg. It's the Nug Nugs from the mother. And what was it? In full. This is a long quote. This is a huge one, but it's worth it. Christian Scientists, be a law to yourselves that mental malpractice can harm you neither when asleep nor when awake. Wink, wink. That's it! That's all it was! I had to go out and buy a brand new book. It was fewer letters than the amount of letters it took for you to simply send the letter to tell me to buy your stupid book. Couldn't you just have added it, you weirdo? How mad would you have been? You're waiting to see this mega dope thing, and she's like, be a law to yourselves. That mental malpractice can harm you neither when asleep nor when awake. And you're like, haven't you already told me that? And couldn't you have told me that in the take notice message you gave? It's less words. Look. Look. Here's the sentence. Here's the message telling them about the sentence. Yeah, but you need to have it in the book. It's new. It's the real true one. Just said in different words. Imagine paying $3 for a new book in 1908 for 2 sentences. It's no wonder that at her death, Eddy's personal fortune exceeded $3 million. None of this, unfortunately, and I would add, unsurprisingly, was left to charity. 0. None. She's rolling in the loot. Mega wealthy. Tricking people, man. Telling people you're not allowed to teach anyone for a year. Instead, every single person. Imagine telling people that. So what is it about? I can't tell you. Why? Because mother said not to. Okay, what else should I do? Buy the book. It's $3. That's a lot of money. It's got a special sentence in it. What does it say? I can't tell you. Did it excite you? Obviously, yes. I loved it. Obviously. Inside, they're like Yosemite Sam. They're all grumbling because they spent $3 on 2 stupid sentences. Yeah. After her decease, a definite scramble for control of her empire ensued. This always happens with enthusiasts, right? It always does. It happens with schismatics. It happens with enthusiasts, right? You have this charismatic figure at the top. She's the seer. She's the mother, right? And everything that's coming out of her mouth is the mother lode. Nonsense. But people believe it. They like the whiff of that. Oh, yes, okay. Pepe, le pew. Yeah, pew, pew, that's gross. But they, for whatever reason, they're down with the sickness, right? And so they end up supporting it. But then the matriarch dies. And what do? It scrambles for power. We saw that with Mother God, right? Mother God, the lady online, the internet cult lady. It was like, I'm Mother God. And she's got this idea. She ended up getting cancer, breaking all of her own rules. Ended up smoking weed, all sorts of medicines and stuff. Right? 'Cause she had cancer. She's dying. I ended up doing freaky stuff to her. I'm not even going to go into it because we're going to talk about her specifically. But after she died, people didn't know. They were kind of scrambling on what to do. Who takes control? Who takes the wheel? Mother God is dead. Yeah, that's kind of how you know she's not God, by the way. Because God doesn't die. Because God doesn't die. Boom. Right? What a dummy. Their doctrines, by the way, on the Trinity, she says things like this. The theory of 3 persons in one God, that is, a personal trinity or triunity, suggests polytheism, rather than the one ever-present I am. Now, you'll see this later, the influence of things about the I am movement and other things, with New Thought, stuff like that. We'll talk about that in the cult series. All right. On the idea of God and the Holy Ghost, she says, the Jewish tribal Jehovah was a man-projected God, liable to wrath, repentance, and human changeableness. This lady obviously had not read much theology at all. She doesn't understand why that is. No clue. But how many people do? How many people have you met that are like, well, but God, changes his mind, or but God is walking around in a garden, or what, numerous different ways that we describe God. And I'm like, it says he's got, trumpets in his hands kind of thing. Be like, do you really believe that that's the case? He's got coming out. He's like, come on, raise the roof. No, that's a fake. That's not, this isn't what we're talking about. He's not Inspector Gadget. He's the Lord. And she obviously had not studied Trinitarian theology in any significant way. It becomes obvious. But a lot of people don't. And in some ways, do you blame them? Is it tough? Is it tough for you? I know it is for me. There are certain questions. Inevitably, it's a mystery. Inevitably, the deeper you get into the God question, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to peer real deep into the mysteries. You're gonna come up against things that may never, and there will always be a limit. Always. You're never going to be able to see the whole thing. If so, you're not seeing God. Your God's way too small, and by way too small, I mean it's not God. That's a fake, phony God. That's an idol you've created and constructed in your mind. About Jesus. Jesus is the Galilean prophet. Was born of the Virgin Mary's spiritual thoughts of life and its manifestation. Oh, so Jesus is a prophet. That's all it is, right? You're lumping it in with that. Maybe one of the spiritual masters. Spiritual masters. Yeah, she's down with that sickness. Yeah. right? Madame Blavatsky, that whole deal, right? The new agey guys that you see on local television sometimes, right? And they have the big gold medallions, like Flava Flav, right? They got the big gold medallions, and they're sitting there talking about the magical gateways into other dimensions, where the actualization really takes place. Everything else is an illusion. I'm like including the idea that you're a master, because you're not, dude. You are definitely not. The sick are not healed, she claims, merely by declaring there is no sickness, but by knowing there is none. That is where you get into the world of, word of faith. It's where you get into it. The so-called pains and pleasures of matter were alike unreal to Jesus, for he regarded matter as only a vagary of mortal belief and subdued it with his understanding. You have to have magical eyeballs for this. You got to have the magic crystal ball, right? It's cuckoo town going on over there. She's like, you're like, where'd you get this from? I've been really in the zone lately. Really in the groove. It's just coming to me really deep and thick. And you're like, wow. Is that what I got to base it on? Is that what this is? Satan in the existence of evil. Hence, evil is but an illusion. It has no real basis. Evil is a false belief. God is not its author. Okay? The supposititious parent of evil is a lie. All these vagaries are at variance with my system of metaphysics, which rests on God as one and all, and denies the actual existence of both matter and evil. There was never a moment in which evil was real. Yeah, man. Kind of a weird deal. Kind of a weird deal. I mean, doesn't that lend to the idea? You would say, typically people would say, well, if evil's not real, then is it really evil when something bad happens, like, rape or, slugging an autistic kid in a wheelchair with the, Louisville Slugger baseball bat or something? Like, is that evil? Most people would say, yeah. If you're talking about, who or whatever, you might say, well, there's some evil stuff going on over there. That's evil. And to a lot of people, they'd say, a lot of kind of relativist individuals, they'll say, oh, well, yeah, it's not intrinsically evil. It is really just a bunch of cells kind of smashing up against each other in an unfortunate way. All right, nonsense. But that argument wouldn't even work for her, because that matter is also not real. Literally nothing to see here, folks. Literally, what the heck? What the heck? No, on the nature of hell. The olden opinion that hell is fire and brimstone has yielded somewhat to the metaphysical fact that suffering is a thing of mortal mind instead of body. So in place of material flames and odor, mental anguish is generally accepted as the penalty for sin. So you can go down line by line. Let's see what she says about, man and the soul. Man originated not from dust, materially, but from the spirit, spiritually. What does this lead to, by the way? Can you guess? If you listen to the Word of Faith series, you might know. Man is God's image and likeness. Whatever's possible to God is possible to man as God's reflection. It's, possible, of course, that God is God. That he remains God. Where does that line end? No, is all this stuff possible to you? That's one of those why don't you do it things. How about the devil? The devil. A belief in sin, sickness and death, animal magnetism, or hypnotism, the lust of the flesh. What? Death, an illusion, the lie of life in matter. The unreal and untrue, the opposite of life. But see, here's the thing. And so you can imagine some of these things might be subtle. Some people might say, well, yeah, I can, maybe, what's sin, what's evil? Does it have like kind of a being to it? Like, can I go and find it and touch it somewhere? It's substance. You can ask these kinds of questions. But she's this absolute idealist who denied outright the existence of matter from the tiniest insect to the most gigantic star in the galaxies. And yet, practically speaking, she's a calculated materialist, an individual who thoroughly enjoyed all the material comforts derived from denying their existence. She constantly denied these things, and yet, right, as illusions of the mortal mind, right? In her philosophy, all that exists is mind, God. It is good. Matter has no real existence at all. Yeah. It should be mentioned here that Eddy never defined matter to the satisfaction of any qualified logician, so it must be assumed that she meant those elements that were recognizable to the five senses. Yeah. So she's like, that's not real. It's amazing how people who and again, it's amazing how people who say nonsense like that simply cannot live that way. Say, look, that train coming towards you, barreling towards you, with smoke coming out the front, right? With the horn, brr, brr, get out of the way. You got some conductor, get out of the way, you Looney Tune weirdo. What are you doing? It's not real. It's not real. It's not. Ah. Dun, 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 dun. That's what's going on with this chick. That's what's going on with her. She won't go and stand in front of that train. Oh, no, that's crazy. She's making rules about matter all the time, including go buy my book. Writing. Right? All of these different things. She's engaged in it constantly, and she's constantly looking for material possessions. Constantly. But let's look at the rule of inversion. This is the idea that she has, right? She had this rule of inversion that it's always valid by applying, or it's always valid. And so if you just apply it to a similar situation, right? All rabbits are quadruplets. Inverted. All quadruplets are rabbits. So if you invert, if that's your basic idea, that's how you come to truth, is this notion of inversion. In that way, you apply it to other things, you see very quickly that it is poo-poo trash nonsense. It's garbage, man. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Yeah. Yeah, in the comments, why were there watchers over the tomb to save her from other dead in the cemetery? But whatever, Christian Science is not as crazy as that. It's reasonable. Christian Science is reasonable? What are you smoking, man? No, it's not that their espoused worldview is reasonable. It's that no matter what you espouse, you can't get around it. That's why the people who say that life is an illusion, they still are talking to you as though you're not an illusion. The people who say that there's no such thing as truth are still trying to convince you of its truthfulness. The people who say there's no such thing as evil are out there on the streets, maybe more than any other, complaining about evil in the world, what they perceive to be evil in the world, because they can't get around it. People are not just simply what they espouse, because otherwise they wouldn't even be able to operate. Right? You would have numerous problems if it required consistency from beginning to end. Presupposition to conclusion, all the way through, that it's a systematic thing, that it truly makes sense to the world. Insofar as they deviate from the truth, they fall apart. So you can end up being a group that believes, like, for example, that Mother God never died, but Mother God died, and they tried to preserve her body and mummify it. That's why they got in trouble. So I don't know if I've mistaken what you're saying there. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know about Christian Science Monitor, by the way, if it's connected by anything other than the name. I don't know. At best, matter is only a phenomenon of the mortal mind. This is what Eddy said. Matter is only a phenomenon of the mortal mind, of which evil is the highest degree. But really, there's no such thing as mortal mind, though we are compelled to use the phrase in the endeavor to express the underlying thought. Think about the gobbledygook of that. At best, matter is only a phenomenon of mortal mind, of which evil is the highest. So he's got matter, mortal mind, evil. But really, there's no such thing as mortal mind. Well, then matter is not a product of that, and evil is a product of matter. So that would be the highest one, evil. Matter also as a phenomenon of the mortal mind, but there's no mortal mind. Though we are compelled to use the phrase in the endeavor to express the underlying thought. And that's in Unity of Good, page 50. These are strange words indeed, are they not? Giving a name to an illusion that doesn't exist, representing it as evil, which is equally non-existent, and then blaming it for all the physical woes, which cannot exist, since there is no reality in existence apart from the mind or God. Wackadoodle. Wackadoodle. But it sounds super fancy. You know, you see this with the gurus, right? Don't you? You see this with the gurus. They're all like, yes, man, we are all one. We are all united. Totally one. It's powerfully amazing. People are like, they're like really into it, and they're like super happy, and they're looking at all their buddies in the group while they're singing and dancing. And all the while they end up, you know, people come in and they quickly realize they're not one. A disagreement happens, and they're like, oh no. There's multiple levels of which they are not, in fact, one. You ask, I want your money. I don't want to give you my money. You've already granted we're not one. we are two, at least. Me and you. The syllogism. 1. God is all, God is mind. Therefore, mind is all. And 2. Mind is all, matter is not mind. Therefore, matter has no existence, is only an escape mechanism, right, from the objective world of material reality to the subjective world of idealism, which can never answer the problem of evil, sin, sickness, material death, since they are negated by the assumption that only mind exists and it is immaterial, therefore not included in the material categories. Now, so, I mean, they're just completely detached. They are completely detached from objective reality. Big time. Big time. All right, we're gonna wrap this up real soon here. I skipped over a whole bunch of stuff because in other ones, you know, it's like similar things that we read before on different doctrines, right? But I wanted to get back. I wanted to get into this because I wanted to touch on here existence of Satan, evil, and sin. Probably one of the most obvious doctrines of biblical theology is that of the origin, existence, and final disposition of evil. Despite the graphic biblical portrayal of Satan available for all to see, Eddy and Christian Science energetically deny his existence, referring to him as, quote, another elusive personification. He's another elusive personification. Wow, man, that's fancy talk. What a weirdo. Further establishing her contention that evil is non-existent, she flatly states, hence, evil is but an illusion, and it has no real basis. Evil is a false belief. God is not its author. The supposititious parent of evil is a lie. Supposititious. Yeah. There never was a moment in which evil was real. And that's in her no and yes. Christian Science denies the origin of evil, both evil or Satan. It's only logical that it should deny evil and sin as the result of evil. Concerning sin, of course, Eddy wrote this. The only reality of sin, sickness, or death is the awful fact that unrealities seem real to humans. So the only problem with this is that it seems real. If we just knew it wasn't real, imagine, guys, the utopia that would come about. There's no evil in the world. The stuff that I do that's wicked bad, that's not evil. What is it? It doesn't matter. There's no hell either, dude. I'm all in God, straight up dope. I can do whatever I want. And they wouldn't agree with that because you weren't allowed to teach the students for a year. You had to buy the freaking book. And if you didn't buy the book, you couldn't get away with that because you get kicked out. You get kicked out. John reminds us that sin, far from being an illusion or non-existent force, is in reality a very potent enemy of man. Sin is the transgression of the law. All unrighteousness is sin. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That's in Romans. If we say we have not sinned, we make him, God, a liar, and his word is not in us. 1 John 1:10. Yeah. And as the idea that the devil is an illusion, that puts Jesus, no wonder Jesus isn't the Christ. No wonder he is not the Lord, because he's sitting there battling it out with the devil. Oh, okay. But if the devil is just, phony bologna sauce, if that's all that is, well, then Jesus, he was, wrapping it up with some illusion. She figured it out. She figured it out. Poor Jesus. If he just would have known. She just would have known. As her literary advisor, the Reverend J.H. Wiggin, so aptly put it, Eddy's devil was malicious animal magnetism, which she invented to explain away the rather obvious fact that evil and sin existed, despite her affirmations to the contrary. This doctrine eventually became a mania with Eddy and drove her to irrational behavior and fantastically absurd demonstrations of temper, illness, and rapid excursions to different communities when she felt the fiend closing in. So she felt the fiend closing in. She's like, I'm out of here. I'm bouncing. I'm done with you. People disagreeing. The animal magnetism was coming. She's like, oh, I'm feeling it all around. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. Man is spiritual and material natures. Without fear of contradiction, all rational persons should readily admit to the reality of their physical existence. Man is capable of perceiving his corporeal form. The demands of the body, like food or clothing, prove that it has material existence. Okay? Without it, you're toast. The human mind is capable of discerning the difference between concrete and abstract ideas, the body being easily discerned as a concrete proposition. In view of these three facts, it's worthwhile to note that Christian Science denies, without reservation, all physical existence. As Eddy wrote, man is not matter. He is not made up of brain, blood, bones, and other material elements. Man is spiritual and perfect. And because he's spiritual and perfect, he must be so understood in Christian Science. Man is idea, the image of love. He's not physique. It's a both and, lady. It's a both and. You know what I'm saying? No. In regard to the spiritual nature of man, Christian Science takes a peculiar attitude, but for once an attitude that is logically consistent when followed through. Since man is totally spiritual, the reflection of God, as Christian Science would have it, and God is perfect and incapable of sin, therefore man must also be perfect, as his reflection, and hence incapable of sin. And this is exactly what she taught. Man's origin and the existence being in him, man is the ultimate of perfection and by no means the medium of imperfection. If God is upright and eternal, man, as his likeness, is erect in goodness and perpetual in life, truth, and love. The spiritual man is that perfect and unfallen likeness, coexistent and co-eternal with God. Wow! Wowzers! Coexistent, co-eternal. What? This lady. Cook-a-doo, whack-a-doodles. Yeah, what's wrong? Okay, so she's against the Trinity, right? Because that's like, implying multiple gods in her brain. And yet she's like, oh, coexistent, co-eternal. That spiritual man in the perfect and unfallen likeness. Oh, I got you. Okay. The logical mind can only deduce from these statements that the biblical account of man's fall from perfection and his definition as a finite being are totally in error, and that man is God because if he coexists with an eternal being, he himself is eternal. The weakness of this position can easily be demonstrated by the fact that all material things, including the human body, eventually return to the basic elements of existence. And since God is said to have created all that exists, both material and spiritual, therefore man in both his physical and spiritual forms is a creature, a creation, not of a coexistent and inherently eternal character. She's got to get around this. They got to figure it out. And it's one of the reasons why this kind of stuff falls apart. Because it sounds super fancy, doesn't it? Yeah, oh, we coexist, we're co-eternal. Wow, man, yeah, that's what it means. And then you just break it down and you show what that would mean for the world, or the idea that everything's an illusion. Everything's an illusion, man. It's not real. It's a metaphysical hellscape. It's a product of your mind. If you just let go of that. And then you just break it down and you say, dude, not only is that totally ridiculous, nonsensical, poo-poo trash nonsense, uber cringe theology, we can break it down to show that it's completely absurd. It's unable to explain the world around you, unable to account for how you know, for how you move, how you live and move and have your being. Totally incapable. And of course, she does the same thing, talking about how she heals people. I won't even go into that because it's essentially the same as a lot of these word of faith guys. Word of faith. They go around, they're healing all these people, supposedly. And they're like, yes, I've healed 1 million people today. I've healed so many people. You just have to watch my channel. And you go and you end up watching it, and you're like, I'm seeing dudes in wheelchairs you're laying hands on and walk away. Or, what's the name of that dude that was in a wheelchair? Can we follow up with that cat? They're always doing these rallies with tons of people laying hands on them. And they're always giving like 1 to 3 different people you can go and verify. And either the people are dead, or it ends up being something they're not actually healed from. Or that they never really had. Same thing with her. And it's sad, because during her long life, Eddy allowed her own little granddaughter, her beloved brother Samuel's wife, and her close friend Joseph Armstrong, all to die painful deaths of cancer. Right? Pneumonia. Never, to any known evidence of the contrary, did she ever lift her healing hand to save them. Instead, what did she do? She recommended absent treatment, also called doing nothing. Absent treatment. No, it's nothing. What that means, right? Reading the book, Science and Health. Just buy the book. Make sure you buy the one that has those 2 lines in it. They're mega dope. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, no better authority can be quoted than the sworn testimony of Alfred Farlow, then chairman of the Publications Committee of the Christian Science Church and president of the Mother Church in Boston. What did he say? Clearly stated that he did not know of any healing ever having been made by Eddy of any organic disease in her entire life, but that of a stiff leg. Somebody had a stiff leg. Oh, yeah, it's real stiff. What's the matter? I've got a really stiff leg. Oh, let me see. Let me go ahead and take care of this. Oh, wow, it's loosed up. Oh, good. What? What is this? Holy cow, man. Holy cow. Yeah. She was and then at the end of her life, made very rare but real use of doctors for her spasmodic attacks of hysteria. And toward the end of her life, even allowed Christian scientists the right to use anesthetics, surgery, and services. Right, of orthopedists for breaks and fractures. Remember, I told you the story of a girl that I dated. It was prophesied at a revival that we would be married and that we would have multiple children. In fact, we begin having children maybe within the next year. It put us in a real quandary. I mean, we thought, she was a pretty girl. She was cute and such. But I really wasn't down. We didn't really think about that. And it put us in an awkward place because the prophecy happened right in front of our faces. In front of a whole bunch of people. You know, Jeremiah, that you are going to marry the girl that is standing right next to you right now. I've created her for you before the foundation of the world. And you know that you know that you know. No. I had to do something. So what did we do? Well, we dated, right? That lasted for a minute until it became obvious. And we were both in our own weird enthusiasms. She was into the Word of Faith stuff. I was not. I was into quietism. And I was a Calvinist by this point. So I was into this quietistic Calvinism, however that makes sense, right? But I was into like Madame Guyon. So I really liked that, at least as a method of prayer. And we're talking, and I remember I finally had to make a decision. I said, okay, look, I need to know if we have kids, right? Which we will. There's no doubt about that. Lord willing. And look, man, she's got like 12 kids now with her husband and stuff. You know, I still know who she is and stuff. A family friend growing up. And so the thing is, I remember asking her, like, what would you do if our daughter, was playing outside and fell and broke her leg and, you know, there's like a bone sticking out of the skin? Like, what would you, I don't mean to get too graphic, but I mean, I'm being dead serious about this, like serious fractures, real grossness. What would you do? And she goes, I'd go get the healing verses right away. And I would begin praying the healing verses and pleading the blood of Jesus over them. And I remember asking her, I'm like, okay, I get that like as the first thing. Are you doing that while you're calling the doctor? Oh, no. No. You know, that's not what you do. I knew right then it was over. I'm like, dude, you call the doctor. Your daughter has a bone sticking out of the skin. Your child could have cancer. Your child could be having all sorts of problems, crazy seizures. And all you're going to do is plead the blood and do this magic thing over top of them like you got some special magic hands. As if God wants you to behave that way. As if it works that way. I literally called it off right there. It was done. I said, we can't get married. She was confused. I'm like, look, sweet thing, you're kind of hot to trot, but you are also cuckoo bird crazy and dangerous. That belief is dangerous, deadly. So eventually she allowed some of that. All right? And so we get in this thing. This is the end of this. This is the end, okay? Currently, you know, with all these views, how is it faring right now? It's not too good. There have been a whole bunch of scandals, a whole bunch of problems. They've had to sell off a whole bunch of stuff. Right? Today, Christian Scientists call the Bible and science and health their only pastor. Not noting, quote, with the Bible and science and health as our pastor, Christian Scientists turn to prayer and those two books for counsel and healing. That's it. That's why they got these reading rooms. Currently, the church faces an aging membership, a bunch of gray hairs. No offense to the gray hairs. We love you, by the way. Its resources, however, whether political or financial, appear to be strong. Now, it's as of 2002. But, yeah, so I don't know when this, I forget when this was published. It was 2010 or what it was. On September 26, 2002, quote, by unanimous consent, the U.S. Congress passed Resolution H. Con. Res. 458, recognizing the new Mary Baker Eddy Library for the betterment of humanity. As Mary Baker Eddy, okay, wait a second. For the betterment of humanity as Mary Baker Eddy, but for her outstanding achievements and contributions. Unfortunately, this honor was bestowed on Eddy with little fanfare and even less press coverage. Of course, because honest to goodness, nobody cares. It passed those things out like lemon drops and lollipops. It's one of those things. They're just constantly like, who are we going to honor today? And they're like, Mary Baker Eddy. I don't know who she is, but I guess, you know what? And what did she talk about? That everything's an illusion. Stuff's totally fake. It's just a matter of the mind. Oh, okay. Look, then this is fake. But, all of it is fake news, fake government, fake politics, phony baloney politicians. Kind of fits the bill. Let's vote. That's what happens. That is, you go to a woman whose apparent plagiarism is so clearly evident in the historical record is a testimony to the influence of money and connections. Apparently, some historians now have assigned Mary Baker Eddy the same prestige as Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton Caddy, and the U.S. Congress concurs. So you have to, and as I said, man, when you're talking about plagiarism, I'm not even joking about Martin Luther King Jr. And that's just the beginning. It's the tip of the iceberg, to be quite frank. We're not going down that road today. Not going down that road. In fact, if you want to know what road I am going down today, if you would like to know, if you would like to know what road I'm going down, what you've got to do is you've got to go here. You've got to go here. Okay? In fact, you got to go right now over to Telegram. And why do you got to go to Telegram? Simple. The reason why is because we're going to have a little chat after this. We don't have to talk about this topic. If you'd like to, we can. Really, this is a preparatory phase for other heresies that come along the way. Right? True. So we're going to talk next time. If we talk about, we're going to do one or two things. In fact, this is what we'll do. I'm going to talk about theosophy. That's going to be Monday. Right? That's on reason and theology. But if you would like to follow along in a series that I'm doing, I'm going to talk about nihilism. Right? We're going to talk about the weird world we're in right now and how we got here with that. And we're going to use a fantastic book that's arguing this from a presuppositional framework. That's what we do here, right? The HQ. It's the fountainhead. It's the hub. It's the mega hub, the megazord of all things to do with Catholic apologetics, presuppositional style. That's what we're doing. And I'm glad you're along for the ride. I'm glad you're along. And I'm especially glad for those who found a home over there at the Wolfpack chat. And we're so grateful for you. We're so grateful that we want to go ahead and create even more, to make even more episodes, more content over it, whether it's chats with Tim, whether it's live chats, whether it's stuff where I went on with Spexo, right? Went on with Pine Sap, over on Cozy. I never even been on Cozy. I didn't even know I was on Cozy. But to make that stuff, right? To push hard and to create the very brand new Paleocrats, Johnny Q, and Sally Sue chat for everyday folks. Because you know I love you. You know it's true. I really do. I love you. So see me over there right now. In the comments, in the description below. The link's there. Until next time, never give up. Keep on smiling. And memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.